Okay, well, I've worked in IT now for over 35 years. I started programming mainframe computers, ICL mainframe computers, using COBOL way back in the 80s, and graduated to doing business and systems analysis, leading teams, and then becoming a departmental CIO. And then in Northern Ireland, I was the Director of Shared Services and Strategy, which basically was the equivalent of the government CIO. I was responsible for building IT Assist, which became an award-winning shared service organisation within the government there. And I was also responsible for launching a number of schemes around procurement and so on, which were very well received. I moved to the Irish role in 2016, and we've been very much involved in, first of all, delivering digital government strategies in government, but also liaising with the European Union and OECD, influencing their thinking and implementing some of the regulations and so on that come out of that process. The main factor is it's all about the user, because if the user can't understand the service, can't see the benefit of the service, find it too complex, then they won't use it, and that makes it fairly meaningless. So if you can understand the user journey when they're using your service and actually help through the digital to facilitate that journey and make it fast and smooth, then they're going to like the system and they're going to use it. And if they like the system and use it, then that's enabling you to provide a faster service, a more cost-effective service, a more efficient service, and probably a service that will be enjoyed more by your customers. So user first is the first thing. But also, and related to that, the service, you've got to have privacy built in, and you've got to have data security built in, because probably the worst things now that can happen to any business online, next to total outage altogether, is some sort of interference in their data or some sort of data breach. And GDPR is very clear on business responsibilities when managing digital systems. So the two are very complementary. If you respect user privacy and build transparency and protection around that, and regularly get your systems tested for security, well, if the worst happens, at least you've demonstrated you protected those systems as well as you could. So those things are very important as well. The biggest mistake is to simply be infatuated with getting as much data as possible. And that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to understand what services you're there to provide, or which problem or problems you're trying to fix, and then be very specific in how you use data to address those problems. If you go for the former approach, you will quite rightly be criticised by the Data Protection Commissioner, because GDPR at its heart has purpose, specificity and transparency. In other words, you should only be collecting the data that you're authorised to collect for the service you provide, and you make sure that you only collect that data and not other data, and you make sure that the subjects of that data understand, first of all, what data you're collecting, why you've collected it, and what you intend to use it for. So it's back to how I answered the first question, Priya. If you make it very customer-centric, very user-oriented, you won't go wrong when you're starting to establish the data streams that you need and how you're going to use them. Well, I think that the two areas that are probably being used most at the minute wouldn't by themselves be new trends, but they can be new to organizations. So that would be big data. And I know a lot of the conference is going to be about big data in May. And then the other thing would be artificial intelligence, or AI. And AI comes into its own when you're looking at analyzing large amounts of data in a way that just wouldn't be possible by a human alone. And so the two very much complement each other. But I think, especially with the new EU regulations, the Data Governance Act and the Data Act, and this whole concept of Gaia X and the creation of data spaces, we're going to see a big challenge to organizations to try and interpret large amounts of data very quickly and make strong calls based on very quick analysis of data and the trends and the evidence that it suggests. So I think they're probably going to be the two most important things for all organizations over the next few years in the data space. Well, the topic, I guess not surprisingly, is going to be the challenge of best data usage in government, because most of the things that I've talked about in the last 10 minutes I'll be talking about them again in the context of government. So how we're going to try and make sense of things like the data governance and data acts, how we're going to try and use data to positively impact services and policy relating to those services, and how we are going to try and manage the risks associated with that. So that's broadly what I'll be talking about. I haven't written my presentation yet, but I've had a chat with Ray Walsh about it, and I think that will broadly fit to the agenda of that morning.